Good evening. My name is Jim Fanner, and this is the Leather Report. It's a kinky interview show for kinky people, gay, straight, lesbian, straight, whoever. We have a very interesting guest tonight from San Francisco. He's a leader in his community, in our community. He is a published writer. He has a publishing company, and he is especially known for two things: rope and bondage. He is probably one of the biggest experts in this country. We have with us tonight Mr. Bannon. Race, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Good, good, good. I've got a two-pronged question to start out the evening. I guess you can go with it. It's like, where did your interest in bondage begin? And then I think, well, that sort of asks the question, how did you come out as a kinky man? They seem sort of tied in. I'm not sure.
Tied in?
There you go. Go for it.
I think it's a coming out process like anything else when you're coming out into something new. And so you do it kind of by dribs and drabs. You don't just magically come out and say, oh, I'm kinky now, and this is what I like to do. When I was about 18, I was attracted to a certain kind of Leatherman image. Mm-hmm. And that image was very seductive to me, and so I sought it out and found a leather bar in Chicago, which is where I was living at the time. And even though I was underage at the time, I was actually entering a bar illegally. But I sought out the men that fascinated me, and one of the things that over time I realized they liked was bondage. So mm-hmm. along with my fascination for these men and the kind of sexuality I knew they enjoyed, I didn't quite know what it was yet, but I knew it was something special. And then I came to understand a bit about bondage, began to explore, time went on, learned a little bit more, and of the many things I enjoy, it's one of my great pleasures.
Very good. Now, we have a lot of people that are watching this show that really might not have a very good clue about what bondage is. So tell us about bondage. I mean, what is it and why is it fun?
Bondage is the restraining of somebody for erotic effect. I mean, that's kind of the classical definition. But what it is basically people who like to be restrained for various kinds of reasons, and they enjoy it for various kinds of reasons. Some people enjoy it because they like the physical feel. They like the sensation of being bound. They like that it's kind of comfortable. It's almost like having a blanket wrapped around you. It's very comfortable. Some like it because it aesthetically looks beautiful on the body. They like visually the way the bondage looks. Mm-hmm. Other people like it because it accents if people are playing with roles like dominant and submissive roles, it accents the dominance and or submission in the play. Because obviously if somebody has someone else tied up, there's a certain amount of control involved there, and that's very exciting. So those are three reasons why people like bondage, and I'm sure there's a lot more, but those seem to be the biggies.
Okay, well, let's say someone might have a beginning interest in bondage. Where do they start? And I think you have a book that might help them, too.
Yes, I do. But before I do, a shameless plug for my book. I think nowadays, we have so many more resources than we had previously. Not that many years ago, there was nowhere to turn to get good information. Now we have books on the subject. We have a lot of various organizations around the country and the world that do a lot of educational and informational programs so that people can learn these kinds of things in a safe way, with mm-hmm. people that really know what they're doing. There's magazines devoted to it. There's the internet, which has a lot of information on it. Mm-hmm. If anybody is internet savvy and does a search on bondage, they will see this large amount of information come up on the screen. So I would say seek out really good information. Yes, I do have a book coming out on rope bondage, and mm-hmm. I also have a book that previously published on SM play in general. And those kinds of books are good for a basic bit of information. Then once you have that basic bit of information, get some simple bondage gear. I suggest rope because of its versatility. And play, mm-hmm. experiment, enjoy, and don't be afraid to experiment a little beyond what you think you're capable of.
Good. I mean, I would say that the book that Race has written, called Learning the Ropes, it's a basic guide to safe and fun SM lovemaking. It's an excellent book. If any of you have interest, this is a great book to get. It's available at any bookstore. But you have a new one coming out. Why don't you give us the title and tell us about it?
The title is Bound to Please, and the subtitle is a basic guide to erotic rope bondage. And I wrote it because there is a very strong interest in bondage. Of all the kinds of kinky play people do, for some reason, bondage seems to have universal appeal. I actually did some research, and I asked people in various leather shops and adult stores around the country, what's the one thing people ask for information about? And the majority of them said rope bondage, and there was no real book on the subject. So, lo and behold, spring of '98, there will be a book called Bound to Please, which will give a basic bit of information about it. It's not the encyclopedic reference of bondage, but it's a good basic primer for people wanting to get into bondage.
Great, great. Now, well, since we're talking about books, why don't we talk about what you do for a living now? Daedalus Publishing Company.
Correct.
Tell us about it, and tell us what type of books you publish. I mean, it's an amazing endeavor that you've started this up, and it's been so successful.
Well, Daedalus Publishing Company originally started as a means by which I could publish my own book. I was afraid that...
Self-publishing,
I was self-publishing. I was afraid that a mainstream house would not touch the subject. And if they did publish the book, I was afraid that the editorial process at a large publishing house would somehow taint it.
Homogenize
it and make it a little more acceptable to the mainstream. I wanted it to be my voice.
Like erotic macrame, something like that?
Something like that, yeah. So I published my own book, and it's been amazingly successful. It's
a good book.
It's achieved bestseller status now. In this genre of book, it is an official bestseller. And once I published my own book, I realized that there was very little literature that this community could turn to for reference, for historical, archival, information, for even for basic organizing around, groups and things like that. So I said, we need a literature because a community isn't taken seriously, in my opinion, until it has a body of literature. So I decided to start Daedalus Publishing Company, not just for publishing my own stuff, but other people's as well. And we are now doing that.